William Lofton Hargrave was a 20th century pioneer of the Episcopal Church in Florida. His legacy may be found throughout Florida, but is especially prominent in Brevard County.
My name is Greg Brewer. I am the fourth bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Central Florida. I inherited a legacy of growth from World War II literally up until right now. The waxing and waning of the real estate market has deeply affected the economy of Central Florida. The good news is that going back to Henry Laudit, who was the bishop of the entire Diocese of South Florida, he presided over the very beginnings of a World War II, post-World War II boom that changed the face of Central Florida. His goal was missionary expansion. His goal was literally reaching all of these new populations that moved into the diocese. So that in 1969, when a convention was held in Orlando to move the diocese from one diocese, which ranged from Ocala all the way down to Key West, they presided over a convention that broke that diocese into three: Central, Southwest, and Southeast. William Hargrave, was the first elected bishop of the Diocese of Southwest Florida. And over his leadership, tremendous things happened that literally caused the church in that part of Florida to boom. In fact, I would go so far as to say that because of the growth of the Episcopal churches in all three dioceses, including Southwest Florida, that was a part of what made our diocese attractive to retirees who began to move down here in great numbers, especially in the 1960s.
Hargrave did much more than grow the church. This short presentation will talk about some of Hargrave's accomplishments, but it is our hope that it will give you a small understanding of the person as well. William Hargrave was born November 10, 1903. Coming from a poor family, he worked many jobs as a boy and took classes during the evening, and at the time was the youngest graduate of Atlanta Law School. In his late 20s, he went back to school and graduated from the Virginia Theological Seminary in 1932.
When he came here, he had been the vicar of St. Mark's Cocoa, starting in 1932 to 1938. From there, he was priest in charge of St. Luke's, Merritt Island, this parish, from 1932 to 1943. Then rector of St. Mark's Cocoa from 1938 to 1943. But more importantly, he also founded a mission, St. Phillip's, on the south part of the island, to try to reach a population that no one else was reaching, the Afro-Caribbeans who were moving into the area to work the fields, to begin to start a new kind of life. He wanted to make sure that they were not just here for economic gain, but also for care and for nurture. And it was out of that that St. Philip's was formed. But way ahead of his time, that mission was closed in 1943, not because of a waning population, but because of his commitment to integrate St. Mark's Cocoa, so that St. Philip's literally was absorbed, so that in the end of World War II, you had probably one of the first fully integrated congregations of black and white people in all of the state of Florida. That was the kind of vision that William Hargrave had.
In 1939, Reverend Hargrave married Minnie Frances Whittington of Merritt Island, who became an Episcopalian before she became Minnie Frances Hargrave. Minnie claims to be one of his most challenging converts. He had to marry me to convert me.
In 1939, he worked with Rockledge physician Thomas Keneston to form the first hospital in the area, Wuestuff Hospital, 8 rooms, 10 beds, in 1941. In other words, his care was not just for the people who showed up on Sunday. His care was the community. He saw that his responsibility as a priest was to reach out to the community that was given to him, not just pastorally love and care for the people who showed up on a Sunday morning, which he did quite well, but the vision was larger. And that's continued to be the case, not only here at St. Luke's Merritt Island, but all throughout the South Florida Diocese. We understand our role and responsibility not merely to care for the people who come on Sunday, but to reach our communities with the love and care of the gospel.
When the Eugene Wuestuff Memeorial Hospital opened in 1941, it had a staff of 4 doctors and 2 nurses. Dr. Keneston became Wuestuff's first medical director and Rev Hargrave its first president. Hargrave remained in that position, as well as rector of St. Mark's, until 1943. In the mid-1940s through the early 1960s, Rev Hargrave was called to churches in Florida, up in South Carolina, back down to Fort Pierce, Florida, and ultimately to serve on Bishop Loudon's staff. He was later responsible for the Gulf Coast Archdeaconry. In late 1969, this area became the Diocese of Southwest Florida, and Hargrave was elected to become its first bishop. He retired on August 31, 1975, and moved to Cocoa Village. A few months later, on October 15, 1975, Bishop Hargrave died of a heart attack at his home.
It's significant that William Hargrave was buried here at St. Luke's. More often than not, where a bishop gets buried is actually in his cathedral. That would have been St. Peter's Cathedral in St. Petersburg, Florida. So the fact that he chose to have his remains here says something about the special place St. Luke's must have had in his heart as well as in his ministry.